Hi guys, welcome back to the Basketball Feed channel. Today we'll be speaking about the MVP race, everything about the MVP race, the parameters, what it takes to be an MVP, between the four front runners, Shai, Wemby, Luka, and Jokic, and basically the different consensus and what we want to see, in the MVP race, what makes this individual worthy of the MVP, because they're all MVP worthy players. So let's get into it. If you are new to the channel, subscribe, like the video, and let's get into this analysis type video. Okay, so we are first going to speak about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which I would say is the consensus runner-up, even though some sources say differently. What is Shai's case? Well, Shai is, I'm not going to say as elite of a two-way player as he was last year, but he's still, he's still a really good perimeter defender. He is part of the best defense in the league in the OKC Thunder. The OKC Thunder are on course for, I believe, 66 wins, somewhere there, or 64 wins. One of the two, you know, which is a really good mark, especially coming from a historic season last year. And, you know, mid part of the season, before all the MVP talks, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was seen to be the front runner of the MVP by far. He was, consensus to be the first unanimous MVP since Stephen Curry in 2016, which is a really huge achievement. But obviously, a lot has changed from that. What is his, what is his like play style? Translate to his team. It's a very unique play style. Kind of like a scoring hybrid. He can give you 37 assists while also playing elite defense on the perimeter, and he is valuable to his team, indifferent to the other players. You need your team to be good to an extent, or you're not gonna get your MVP unless you're like Russell Westbrook in 2017. So, all I'm not gonna be really speaking about, you know, the record, like, oh, this team is better this amount of times without this player because some of those are flawed. Like, for example, the Spurs. You want your team to be good. Like the OKC Thunder, Shea was injured. The OKC Thunder played really well. You want that to happen. Shea would want that to happen because you want his team to be good without him. He wouldn't want his team to be derailed because of his injury. And also, Shea is having probably the most efficient season of all time by a player, which is wild considering he's averaging like 31, 32. That is crazy. And, you know, he is a top candidate for this award all around. He's probably, the most, I'm not going to say the most spoken about, but, he is probably like statistically, efficiently, the best, player to win this award. Next up, we have an interesting one. We have Victor Wembanyama. Now, Victor Wembanyama is a very unique player. 7'4", big, who can handle the ball, shoot from half court. I'm sure you've heard this many times, while also being an elite rim protector. Dare I say, one of the best defenders, at least I've ever seen, one of the best defenders there's ever been. He just needs the accolades to back that up. And it's looking like he will get the accolades. It's only a matter of time before that happens. This year is due to get DPOY. He might become the youngest MVP ever, eclipsing Derrick Rose. But let's speak about Wemby's case. Wemby is an interesting choice because Wemby actually has spoken about, what it takes to be an MVP and why you should be the MVP. He said that, you know, defense is 50% of the game, which I completely agree with him, and that makes a lot of sense because, mind you, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the front runner of MVP last year over Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic averaged basically a 30-point triple double while having elite efficiency. He was like 54, 42, 84, somewhere there with his shooting splits. And Shea won it over him. Some it might be because of the record, but I think the record was, moved away from that. It was because Shea was elite, was an elite two player. That was what it was considered as. I read some articles, and they said, oh, Shea's elite two-way presence really elevated his team. Not saying Jokic didn't elevate his team, but that was the reason why, one of the reasons why Shea was given MVP. And so Victor Wembanyama's case there is very high. He's the best defensive player in the league, which is very very valid for the MVP case. He's the best defensive player by far. Like his impact or like blocking shots, stealing, and just being a presence is insane. And why Victor said this is because some people like to overshadow that part of the game, which I understand. Secondly, he said beat OKC in a series 4-1. That one is a bit odd. You could have said like, oh, we beat the best teams. Like, yeah, that's it. But like, I guess it is what it is. And the third, he said, offense is not just points, which I couldn't agree more because someone like Stephen Curry, at least prime Stephen Curry, can generate offense while running around like something that we've never seen ever. And we probably won't see for a long time. Someone that can genuinely generate points, so much points for his team by just being a presence, just running around, getting open looks for his team. This is why I think Stephen Curry is one of the great playmakers because prime Stephen Curry get past. He averaged 8 assists back in like 2013. He still averaged like 7, 6, but that is just half of his playmaking. The rest of his playmaking is him moving around the court, which opens up shots for his teammates. But we're not speaking about Steph Curry, we're speaking about Victor. Why Victor deserves the MVP? I believe that his impact on the team is far greater than any other MVP candidate. Which is something I did say I wasn't going to speak about. Like the Wemby's team is better off, or not better off. Wemby's team is still 10-5 without him, something like that. It might have changed, but they actually did play a game and they won. They are currently on an 11-game winning streak. But that is what I'm thinking in my head. Wemby and the Spurs. Let me tell you something. I read so many articles, I've seen so many clips. These dudes were not supposed to be here. According to the fans, I knew they were going to be, a good team because, it's Wemby and Stephon Castle really had to step up and elevate his game. Stephon Castle is having an amazing season. My my pick for, a first or second all defensive team somewhere in there. But this team was on average maybe projected to be a 41 win team, which is like in the West barely playing. But obviously, the West this year has been weird. The Warriors have been injured. The Trailblazers, I don't know what's going on with them. But I assume they're meant to be worse. So it kind of is a good season. The Clippers have been going on a run. They went on that run. So, that's something. And then the Phoenix Suns have really shocked us. And it's the Phoenix Suns, but like, Devin Booker has really come to his own. Devin Booker has done his thing. They've gotten better somehow with KD gone. But the Houston Rockets, weird team, they should have been doing better, honestly. But that's just me. I feel like Wemby has a case, his two-way presence is elite. And this might be something crazy. I'm about to say something crazy here, but I believe that Wemby's presence on defense is greater than Shea's presence on offense or Luka's presence on offense or Jokic's presence on offense. That's not a ridiculous. Okay, maybe not Jokic, but that's not a ridiculous thing to say. Like I think, he is up there. You know, even on the official like NBA list, if you go to NBA.com or the NBA app, he is like the front runner. He's like the first, and then it goes Shea, and then it goes Jokic, Luka. But hey, it'll be interesting to see his development coming in to the few years, or even this season, the postseason. It'll be interesting to see the Spurs. There are a lot of people, Fred VanVleet. There are a lot of people that are kind of hating Fred VanVleet on the Spurs because I don't know. the young and experienced team. But they might make some motion purely because of that man. We'll see what happens. Now, this is where, we take the turns, we look into it. This is an interesting one, right? Nikola Jokic. We are speaking about Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is a very, very interesting player. You know, he is one of the greatest offensive players of all time. His impact on the team is insane. You know, he's done it with Jamal Murray and friends, basically. In fact, at some point you could have just said Nikola Jokic and friends. But the Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray 1-2 punch is probably the best in the league at the moment. And if you're looking for someone who is dominant in every facet, statistically the best player, statistically the most valuable player, he is the most valuable player statistically. Maybe not with the eye test, maybe with the eye test, that do what you will with that information. But Nikola Jokic has a very good case for MVP, and I feel like everyone's forgetting that. I don't know because he's been injured for a bit, but Nikola Jokic has has the chance to make history as well, right? Because he can become full-time MVP, joins LeBron, and I don't remember the last person. Might be Magic or like something like that. But anyway, yes, no, the chance to enter the history books, and I feel like the league has some sort of feud with Jokic because my personal opinion, I feel like he should have won it last year, but that's just me. In fact, that was a lot of people, but he is being disrespected a little because people act like averaging a triple double is normal. Russ did it like 3 times in a row. Nikola Jokic is doing it while, you know, having insane efficiency. Even though, after he came back from his injury, he had down games, he was still amazing. He had triple doubles everywhere. So I feel like they need to put more respect on Jokic's name because I'm telling you now, we'll never see anything like this ever again. We saw Russell Westbrook and we then elevated to Nikola Jokic, and that's it. That's where it ends. Yes, we might not see Wemby again. We probably won't. We will never see another Wemby again. But Jokic, what Jokic is doing will historically never happen ever again. I feel like, that needs to be respected. And he has a very good chance in the MVP race. That's just me. Now, last, but definitely not least, Luka Doncic. I would say Luka Doncic is the fans' MVP. I've been glazing Luka all year. I felt like, he should have a very good case for his MVP. I know they've been flogging him for his defense, but statistically, he's not a bad defender. He's above average. I'm not going to say above average. I'm just going to say average because I don't want to get attacked. But, he's average. In some cases, some people have argued that he's been a better defensive player than Shai this year. I'm not going to say the other last year. But, the Lakers have been on a roll, Him, LeBron, AR, Austin Reeves, obviously. They've been killing it. That three-man combo might be scary. They will be scary in the playoffs if they don't meet Minnesota. I'm really sad I couldn't speak about like Ant-Man, because Ant-Man now officially, is out of the race. He can't make the ruling because of the 65 game rule. It's just really weird. Because like the 65 game rule really didn't decide much because most of the MVPs played 65 games, but like looking at how the game is advanced, you need that bit of leeway because I'm pretty sure he's 1 game off of missing. If I'm Anthony Edwards, I'm saying, oh no, but he got suspended that 1 game. No, but that was Luka. Anthony Edwards is injured. If I'm I'm just saying, I'm lacing them up for 1 game for 10 minutes. I'm just keep me in the corner and then let him get his first all NBA team, you know, all NBA first team. I feel really bad for the kid. And Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham was a legit case to be the MVP. Like legit, like properly. Like not he was legit a front runner at some point because Shea and Wemby were all projected to not even make the cut. The 65 game rule Cade was, and all of a sudden lungs collapsed, which is really terrible. But we're speaking about Luka. Luka, I don't know what Luka has to do. He has to cure cancer, He has to make my girlfriend come back to me. He has to find uh, find a way to create world peace forever while averaging like 50 because the league actually does not rate Luka that much, which is crazy. The fact that Luka can start averaging 40 in a month and somehow, some way, he manages to drop, not increase, he manages to drop. He doesn't even stay the same, he doesn't go up. He drops in the MVP race, and you have all these pundits talking about, oh, I'm not gonna vote for Luka. Now I wouldn't vote for Luka because the defensive side, blah blah blah. Some of this, some of these people, advocated for James Harden back in 2018 to win MVP. James Harden, no disrespect to James Harden, MVP James Harden. In fact, James Harden in general is historically one of the worst defenders ever. Worse than Stephen Curry. Well, Stephen Curry is an above average defender. If you know ball, I'm not glazing, but Steph Curry is an above average defender. If you actually watch games instead of stat watching. But anyway, it is insane how much the league doesn't rate Luka that much. I feel like he deserves it. Uh, I feel like he's up there. He's a scoring machine. He's probably gonna be seen as the best scorer in our generation in a few years. 10 years when it's all said and done, or when he's still in the league, kicking it when he's old, he's going to be seen as probably the best scorer, in our generation in the 20s. So I feel like he has a very good case, and that the league just kind of scrunches up, his stat sheet, throws it at his face, and they're like, you have to do more, which is insane to me. But yeah, Luka is also up there for the MVP race. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Who do I think should win MVP? Oh, who do I want to win MVP? Watching Wemby win MVP would be nice, Youngest MVP ever. One of the most historically defensive seasons ever. He would get his DPOI finally. And he might be a unanimous DPOI, crazy enough, for maybe like 10 years. But I can't just settle over the fact that Luka Doncic is still an NBA player. Luka Doncic is still there. I really would want to see Luka win the MVP. It'll bring joy in my heart, and I feel like it will be deserved. So my list will be Luka. I want to say Wemby. I'm gonna say Wemby. So Luka, Wemby, Shai Jokic. I'm really disrespecting Jokic here, but he probably is the best player out of the four. But the league doesn't like him. You know, Speaking of Luka, voters fatigue while not winning the MVP is insane. Imagine having voters fatigue for something you haven't won. Like Nikola Jokic has voters fatigue, you know, because he has won MVPs, and they're tired of voting for him. Luka hasn't won Jack, and somehow they're tired of him. Like it's crazy. But I would like to see Luka win the MVP. I think it will be deserved. He's had an amazing season. And that is my full, not analysis, just, chat about who I think should win the MVP, what, it takes to win the MVP, what these four players bring to the table for their teams and as individuals. And I'll see you guys for the next video.